think we're live. We don't have sound. Now we have sound. Now we're live.
Now we have sound. All right. Well, I'm looking at the stream right now, which I always do at the beginning to see if we are actually live. Are we
Don't
live?
you trust me
Chat?
at this point?
No, because you do
I-
randomly just
Put
turn
us on random channels.
Yeah, put us on soccer channels or whatever. Okay. Hello, everyone. I see that we are actually live now, so I'll close this to save internet bandwidth and just look at the chat. Welcome to the latest episode of The Second Sons, episode 12, I believe. As always, I'm Roy Rogers, and with me today is our usual crew, plus an extra special guest. So I will let our extra special guest, reigning North American champion Chris Schoenthal, introduce himself first. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me back. I enjoyed it last time, so when Aaron told me the topics for today, I was like, all right, I'm coming back.
Yeah, it'll certainly be one of the more ranty Aaron episodes. So Sid, who just unleashed his wonderful laugh on us, how are you doing today, Sid? How's
I'm
the end of
doing
summer
great.
treating you?
Good. I have almost a week left before work starts, so I'm still living the summer dream out here in California. And just this morning, I made top 16 in the Octagon tournament, so life is good, man. Everything is
Someone
coming
started
up,
jerking off at that.
Lucas. Yeah, life is good.
And our technical guru Buzz, how are you today? How are things out in Sweden? Is it all
A-okay.
sunlight right now? Like, does the sun ever go down in August?
It's my other screen. It's
your
dark.
other screen,
It's
okay.
dark.
Okay, so it does get dark in Sweden. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And last but certainly least is Aaron. How are you doing today, Aaron?
Hey, I'm pretty good. Today we're going to talk about FFG OP. So I'm drinking Coors Light to put me in a like mind to an FFG employee.
The silver bullet.
Okay. So yes, today we are talking about FFG organized play. 3 of the 5 people, and obviously Chris most famously here, attended Gen Con recently, which ended up being much more of a controversial tournament that I think, and we talked a lot more about this, you can listen to us in our last episode, specifically about Gen Con, but it did spawn some community feedback about it, which led to Zach Rayburn, the OP manager for Fantasy Flight / Asmodee North America, to go on our sister show, parent show, cousin show, I don't know, the white
Kissing
book,
Cousins. Kissing Cousins.
Kissing Cousins, the white book, and do an interview with Will and Chris, which is one of the reasons why Chris is here today, and some of my fellow white book co-hosts like Patrick, who's been on the show, and
Luke.
oh my God, Luke, who has been on the show. Well, there we go.
You just imagine his ass dancing and get dazzled.
I did imagine his ass dancing. So this interview proved to be, at least for one member of this panel, to be a pretty upsetting interview. So we're going to talk a little bit, not a little bit, probably a lot, to be completely honest, about the state of Thrones organized play, sort of at the end, sort of-ish, of a year of OP for Thrones 2nd Edition, because the first Thrones 2nd Edition tournament was Kingslayer last year, and now, of course, we've had the first North American champion. So we've had sort of a year of how Fantasy Flight Games wants to organize the game on a tournament level, and also Zach laid out some things that are going to be coming into the 2017 season that I think are going to be pretty interesting for us to talk about. So, Aaron, why don't you start us off? What sort of about the interview in general really seemed to spawn you wanted to take a whole episode about this?
So I think that the biggest problem of everything is that Zach came on the White Book and was like, everything's cool. We're doing everything fine. We've got some ways to improve, but, like, don't worry about it. We're on top of this. And then, like, he consistently answered questions by going, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, maybe we'll be able to do that one day, and never having a real answer. And it was just, like, and then everyone was like, wow, those are great answers. And it's like, no, they're not. Like, these are things other companies do, other companies are able to run, and FFG seems utterly incapable.
Chris, since you were actually there and did the interview, why don't you give us your sort of general thoughts about it before we dive into the points?
Sure, yeah. To provide a little context, as I was telling the guys before we went live, there was, and Will briefly mentioned it, but he ended up taping it together pretty seamlessly. There was probably half an hour to 45 minutes of really interesting and good discussion that didn't end up getting recorded just because of some technical issues that Zach had. So in a way, it's still Fantasy Flight's fault for not paying him enough to buy a new computer. But that discussion was a little more in depth, I thought, than what we got the second time around. And then Will stopped it and said, "Uh-oh, we have a major problem." We took probably 20 minutes of technical fixes, and then we kind of quickly recovered the stuff we missed, and then got into a couple questions that we hadn't quite gotten to yet. So I can understand the perspective of saying that the interview was unsatisfying from certain angles. But I think if we had the full context of it, that would help. And also to some degree, I just disagree with Aaron's characterization of it.
Good. So we're gonna have some conflict. All right.
All right,
Sid.
hey, sorry, one more thing. So after this episode, which I knew I was writing to them anyway, but we got an FFG contact form for OP. So I wrote them a 3-page letter-ish. I don't know, 3 or 4 pages. A really fucking long letter about my concerns about what they did. So we're not going to read that letter on air, but I'm posting it everywhere as soon as this shit's over. So expect that letter to start showing up everywhere. We'll go over a quick outline of the 4
I'm
major
kind of
issues.
disappointed to hear you say you're not going to read it on air, because I had some, as you might know, I had some responses to that, which I would have loved to.
I mean, we can have Aaron read it. We can do a back and forth between you two about it. I mean, I was just the one who was trying to save our listeners / viewers the experience of having a letter read to them. But
Well, we've got an outline. Let's see if there's everything
Yeah,
in
we
the
can go through the
outline
points.
that
Sure.
and then like we can have a nice forum argument too. Like
Yeah,
this can be a 4-day argument, no big deal.
all right, Sid, general thoughts.
And this may be due to the reasons Chris outlined just a moment ago, but I felt like a lot of the answers were unsatisfactory, and not necessarily dodged questions, but revealed some troubling trends going on at FFGOP, and maybe we'll get into some of those that I thought I recognized in a few of the answers. Things that raised some red flags for me about kind of their operations there at OP and their ability to deliver like the community the best OP program possible. But we'll get to that. Ultimately, I did not think that that it was that the answers were bad, just that they maybe revealed some things worth talking about. So maybe I fall kind of in the middle between Chris and Aaron so far. I don't know. We'll see.
Sure. And I want to clarify where I am, because I don't think that's necessarily true, Lucas. I, by no means, am I interested in saying FFG's organized play is doing well at their job and is running things completely satisfactorily. I wrote a few points of my own, mostly about the prize support, but also about some of the communications issues that they'd had after we received that OP form too. So I don't want to come off as being the defender of FFG's organized play system here by any stretch of the imagination. I just wanted to clarify that I think that some of the points that Aaron brought out were not necessarily well-founded in the letter itself.
Hey, apparently Seth is watching now too. Look at that.
Yeah, that's
Right.
good. All right. So Buzz, before I sort of move into the specific points, this was Europe came up a lot in this, and as our in this discussion. So as our Euro representative, what did you think about the interview as a general thing?
Well, I was real pleasantly surprised that they are supporting Stalek, of course. That's great. But I also think it's good to have, even if he would say nothing about anything, it would be an FFGO employee from FFGOP that was trying to communicate with the community, and that's a really big step for us, I think. I mean, yeah, I think it was good, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of what he said was good. bit too diplomatic, maybe. But as Chris said, there was probably a lot of discussions that we don't know about because of the technical difficulties and stuff. The reason I started watching listening to it directly was because Aaron said, "Oh my god, this is shit," blah 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 blah, blah. And
Because it was shit.
and I was like,
I mean, both, it was shit,
at
but it
every
also
turn,
got +1 listener for White Book, so I'm sure that didn't hurt Aaron's cause any.
yeah.
Wait, what? I missed that.
But at every turn, I was like, yeah, no, Aaron is so wrong at this. So it's
Yeah,
usual.
you guys are much. You have a higher bullshit tolerance than I do. Because coming on and then, well, whatever. I have outlined notes of things he said that I'm going to directly disagree with. So we'll get there. Let's instead of speaking in generalities, let's get there specifically.
All right. So, do you want to start with your first point, Aaron?
Well, first, this episode of Second Sons is in response and about to Zach Rayburn's interview on White Book Season 7, Episode 34, or 258, because Will doesn't know how to number shit. He is responsible for components for the game, which suck and are addressed in both the letter and the interview. Marketing of events, which we're kind of going to ignore, even though I've never really seen much marketing for events. Running events, addressed in both the letter and the interview. Prize support, letter and interview. Tournament regulations and documents, which are not addressed, but hey, Melee's getting a card design. Do we have a tournament document for Melee?
No.
Nope.
No. And
55-minute round timers for
That's right.
Melee. Yes.
That's right. 55-minute melee
Come on,
rounds.
you get 120 minutes for the final. That's plenty.
Oh
of time.
yes.
That's right.
The final was untimed at Gen Con.
It
Okay.
was. It's true.
How long does anybody?
Well,
know how long
your
it
final
went,
was
though?
untimed too, right, Chris?
Yes, my final was also untimed, which is good because it came in at an hour 55, so we would have been 4 minutes short of that 120 minutes for a joust game.
Sid, in my experience, it was shorter than most final tables for Melee. Certainly shorter than the one Andreas experienced and Ryan and Seth experienced at Worlds last year. And I think it was a little bit shorter than the one at Gen Con last year, which was not overly long either. The Corey, Peter, Brian, I don't remember who the fourth person was last year. So, but it was, I would say, moderately long. Like, perfectly within reason. Unlike, again, Chris and Seth's game, which went on forever.
so one thing we're not going to touch on, this is not about either the FAQ or the rules. All those terrible rulings like Varys's riddle and so on, that still all needs full.
Okay.
Seth chiming in the chat that he was the fourth player at that other Melee table as well.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so Seth.
Of course he was.
Did he finish in fourth place? All right. So my letter has 4 major points. We'll take them one by one.
Let's do it.
First, the lack of communication, especially over the Melee change at Gen Con and Worlds. Zach claims that he lacks a means to communicate, but that couldn't be any more untrue. That shows he's completely out of touch. And, like, I don't know how that's not just laziness. Like, they have their own website. They can have a blog on their own website. They own Card Game DB, which has a front page and a message board. Their own website has a message board. Their employees are members of the Facebook group. There's like 50 Thrones podcasts. Like, how can they not communicate with us until the last minute? Unless they're making these decisions at the last minute and choosing to hide them, there's absolutely no way that they can be this bad at communicating and have it not be through negligence or on purpose. No defense?
No, I think it's a fair point when he said that the front page of the FFG website is not the place for updated OP news. I thought to myself, well, okay, if it's not, then where is, you do have outlets to take advantage of. And even if it's not, I'm not sure why it's not, because anything that pops up on the FFG homepage, even if it's for like half a day, it shoots out to the community at large at very quick speed. I mean, I don't feel uninformed, and I don't even have my finger on the pulse of that many like FFG contacts. It's just news is pretty quickly spread out between the community. So even if it was just on the front page momentarily, it would hit everybody. And I'm not sure why. He didn't really justify why the FFG webpage is not the place to communicate OP changes. At least not in the interview we heard.
Yeah, so I can chime in a little bit there. I think his point on that point was when you have 8 games that you're providing support for, the front page of your website is not the place to post a 2-sentence article saying, hey, we're not doing a Melee card design at Gen Con for Game of Thrones LCG. And I agree with him on that point. That's not how to do it. My concern, though, comes in when he says they don't have the outlets for it. And I think that comes down to, and this may not be on him, this may be more of a corporate structuring issue, that they choose to use their social media in very specific ways. Their social media posts are very cut and paste between Facebook and Twitter, and a lot of times their OP newsletter even. Whereas in my mind, the Melee change that he talked about would have been perfectly appropriate as a tweet. Use Twitter for its intended purpose, 140 characters. Due to such and such a circumstance, we are no longer awarding a Melee card. Put it on Twitter. There's enough followers, it will get out to Facebook and stuff. But don't just copy and paste your articles from one place to another and then only answer replies from the Twitter account. Use Twitter the way it was intended.
Yeah, or use, I mean, they use the Twitter and the Facebook. Like, I think of all of the arguments that he made, I think this was the most unconvincing, I guess, because in this day and age, it's gaming companies really don't need to have this kind of communication problem. Not only could they create, the OP website could become its own section of the website that, you don't, all right, so you now know, starting, say, in the 2017 season, you don't have to go to the main page. You can go to fantasyflightgames.com/organized play, and there will be, a news feed about anything. Or you could use Card Game DB, which I think it's pretty clear that FFG doesn't really leverage Card Game DB very effectively. Like, occasionally you see Evan post.
They forget that they own it.
Yeah, like Evan. I think last year at least Evan posted about what the how you were gonna get your boxes right for the first edition or second edition.
Yes, I remember that he posted on the forums for the Kingslayer tournament that if you were in the main event or whatever, which was on the Thursday, which is when they were releasing it, that they would save you one, and that was posted on Card Game DB. I will jump in here.
They can do this.
A year ago.
A corporation, not that similar to Fantasy Flight, but in a corporate setting, it's true that you have to be somewhat guarded how you use your social media, and you have to have policies in place. But I don't think that excuses them from communicating in a responsible manner with the player base.
Yeah, I mean, no one's expecting them to tweet your average 20-year-old, but just like a regular. I mean, just scrolling through their organized play, it's largely just retweeting things from the main FFG promotional feed. There's clearly the avenues are there. They just haven't chosen to leverage them. And I think I found that to be sort of the more of all the things to be upset about. I think Zach's sort of tone deafness about this lack of communication was definitely one of the, I think, low-hanging fruit of the interview. You want to move on to point number 2?
Sure. Point number 2, the Gen Con Melee change. Melee tickets were purchased under the assumption that FFG would hold their advertising and word that the tournament was A North American Championship, and B for a card design. This was a significant selling point for not just FFG's presence at Gen Con, but a lot of people going to Gen Con, including the guy who ended up winning Melee. Changing it a week before, after Melee tickets and Joust tickets were sold, after travel accommodations are booked, after tournament tickets are purchased, after everything, is not acceptable. Stalik, Stalik deserves a card design for Melee. I'm not saying they don't, but Stalik is, who the hell knows, they don't communicate, is, to the best of our knowledge, the European, i.e. Continental, National Championship. It's an equal event to Gen Con, and he announced that that's retaining the card design. There's no reason for that to be happening while Gen Con's card design got pulled literally the week before, after we had to specifically track them down to find it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Roy mentioned that the last point was his top on the list of kind of issues he had with Zach, and this one to me was mine. I think this is just pretty unforgivable. It's such a low cost for them to give out a card design. Like, it's not costing them money. It's just costing them a little bit of time. And I understand they have a backlog or whatever, but that's not the player base's fault. So I think this one was probably the worst of them for me.
Well, the fact that John didn't even get a trophy is just super upsetting. Like Chris,
Shouldn't
your
they have
trophy
had the trophy?
Yeah, Chris, your trophy, it looks like the regional trophy, or do they?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same size as the regional trophies. Yes.
Yeah. So it seems to me that they clearly have these trophies in their in-house production. Like, they have a format of, like, this is what the non-worlds trophies are going to look like, and the fact that they couldn't make that up, because to be fair, it still was listed at Gen Con as the North American Melee Championship. It wasn't Melee side event like it's listed at Worlds. It was still in their promotional thing.
It
And the
was
ticket
listed.
and
Yes, but they told us it wasn't.
right, because you didn't get a card design. And one of
That's
the things
not
Zach
why.
one of the
That's
things
not
Zach made clear
why.
is championship level events.
No, it was not. That's
give
not
card
what he
designs.
said. He said not championship level, world championships. Each game gets one card design specifically. He didn't mention card designs in any other context. I listened to that podcast twice for notes. In his exact context was world championships, and it was in discussion of pulling Melee at Worlds, not Gen Con. They could have absolutely kept that card design for Melee. We'll get to those reasons for pulling that later with his actual quotes.
They could have kept that one, but in
I
slight
hated
fairness to him, I think that saying at the world's level we award one, clearly this is lower than that. So I agree with you that they shouldn't have gone back on their word. But if they were to say going forward, each game has one a year and that one is awarded at Worlds, I wouldn't have that big a deal, an issue with that. Like,
So let's talk about Stalik in that context. I know Buzz loves that Stalik is getting the attention, but how does a side event at Stalik receive a card design if at the World Championships you don't get one?
It's not a side event. What?
Oh, it's not a side event? It's not a side
What?
event? Are
No.
you sure?
Yes.
It's a side event everywhere else. That's
Yes.
weird. Something's weird.
It's
I'll
a
be right back.
main event. I mean,
It's
yes,
a
there are
main
fewer
event.
players because the Spanish people and I don't know who else, some Italians, I think, don't play it. So it's not actually fully booked. If you want to go to Salek, there is room at the melee tables. The Joust is fully booked.
Right. So Joust, you would argue, is the most popular event at Stalik, yes? The most well attended.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. It's fully booked. It was booked within 24 hours.
Sounds like
Without-
Melee's a side event.
It's a second event, perhaps not a side event.
A second tier event, right? A less than premier event. My point is, and I don't think Stalik shouldn't have a card design. I think they should, but it's insane to me that we don't have one at Worlds. It's insane to me that there's not one, that there wasn't one for Gen Con, but the fact that they've pulled it for Worlds, for a tournament that takes place before Stalik, is mind-boggling to me. I don't know why we are having it pulled. Like I just don't understand why.
One thing is, the best melee in the world is played at Stalik. It's a completely different
Subjective.
game.
Subjective.
It's objectively a completely different game to play played melee at Stalik than it is at Worlds, Gen Con, in any regional anywhere, even in Europe, in your regionals, whatever, in your local games. Stalik melee is a special thing. So I think it's good that before Worlds, Stalik melee gets a sign. That's good because that's where the real melee is played. I do think melee, as a Worlds winner of melee, kinda almost.
The people's champion. The
People's champion, right? Yes. I do think Worlds should also have one. But
Okay,
if I was gonna give one Melee tournament card design, it would be Stalik because of
Yeah, but
how popular it is for the Polish, for the Finnish, for the, of course, the French. They love Melee, and they're so
sure.
good at it.
Yeah, but it can't just be for one, is the point. Like, if you're gonna do one, fine. I'm not fighting that Sala could be that one, but you can't just do one because it's a slap in the face to literally the players from everywhere else. And
Yeah,
even
yeah,
if you are gonna do just one, you can't pull that one literally 7 days before. Dan called FFG one day and spent
Yes.
like an hour and a half on the phone trying to get in touch with someone, and he got a bunch of maybes. Like, eventually, we managed to find out.
Yeah, and like this podcast, besides Buzz, is not like the greatest melee cheerleading group.
Roy,
I don't think so.
Roy loves it too.
Roy, you like okay, Roy a little bit, but there are people in North America who love melee, who
Yeah.
really do, like honestly love it and test for it and build decks for it and think about it. Even some people in California, which is a shock, I know, to probably most of the world. But I'm not one of them, and Chris isn't one of them, but they do exist. And the fact that it's just stripped from them, that kind of high stakes reward isn't available. I mean, it is insulting. It's not only saying, Europe has the only melee that matters, but we don't want it to matter here for all the people who do care about it. And I feel for them. I mean, it's kind of like, well, it stinks. It stinks.
Yeah, if there wasn't a card design last year for Melee, I wouldn't have prioritized the tournament. I would probably play it, maybe it would be fun, but I would prioritize playing in the joust, in a draft, etc. Because that's what I'm there for. I want to compete for the card design. It's very unlikely I will get it. There's so many good players, there's variants, etc. But that's what you're playing for.
I mean, the question that was left unclear to me about with Zach was what their attitude toward the Continental Championships in general and card designs are. I mean, my assumption going forward is that next year the only card designs will be at Worlds and then one at each Continental Championship. Was the
That's
impression I
not-
got?
Yeah,
My impression is not that Stalik will be a continental championship.
Well, I mean, but they've said that they want a European. That they have
Yes.
repeatedly said that Asmodee will be running maybe in Brussels or somewhere, right? A European national champ, or excuse me, continental championship. So whatever the European Continental Championship ends up being, plus Gen Con, will get card designs, and then theoretically China as well, right? Because China in the past has produced national champions, right? In 1.0, right? There's the Kevin Lannister in 1.0
Yeah.
was the Chinese national champion. So there's three available card designs, which I think makes sense. Like, just logistically, some best players in the world are not going to be able to go to Worlds based on where Worlds is. So giving them an opportunity to win a card design in their own continent makes sense.
So
But I wish Zach had been a little bit clearer about this, particularly because they clearly, because the Store Championship seasons for Thrones and Netrunners starts right after Worlds, they clearly have to have been doing some of the planning now. And it would have been nice if he had sort of signposted this instead of me using my analytic skills to sort of try to tease that out of sort of reading between the lines of his comments.
all right, so that leads into point 3, which is terrible prize support. They've cut prize support at every level, every single level, and they've ignored backlash about it. Nationals happen, and everyone in the community flips out about how terrible the American Nationals prize support is. His own staff warns him that this is bad, and then not only is it not upped, but the Melee prize support is somehow still cut more. Like, you can't cut all the prize support and be like, yeah, and we're not going to do card design either.
I really like my melee mat.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I really like it.
All right, Roy, shut up. So, for
You're
those
ruining his point.
for those of us who matter,
Ouch.
it should be.
So for some clarification,
hang
before we
on.
go a lot further on that point, though, well, I agree with you that a lot of the prize support was not great, especially the recycling. Am I not correct that Nationals for the U.S. was technically an added tournament this year? I don't remember in the past us having a Nationals as well as a Continentals at Gen Con. I don't remember those
No,
being separate events.
we didn't have a Continentals until a few years ago. It like when Worlds became Worlds, like when they started Worlds,
Right.
and they
Yeah,
pulled that from
2020.
Gen Con. Gen Con became Nationals, And then like they realized Stalik couldn't be nationals, so they made Gen Con Continentals to match up with Stalik. So
Right.
like it's their usual like we don't know how to do things until like it's their usual reactionary nature. Sure. However, yes, even if it was added, it did happen. They did get the response to that prize support. He said on the podcast that he heard the backlash and that his own staff warned him that they shouldn't do this at Gen Con. And he decided that he didn't care enough anyway to change it. In addition, while they're cutting prize support at every single level, we're getting less prize support specifically that costs them less to make, which is fine if you want to save costs. But while they're doing this, they're also touting their record-breaking profits in every realm of their production. So they're basically saying we're getting way, way, way more money from you, but at the same time, we're going to cut the cheapest prize support we have, card design, to the bare minimum. And in addition to that, we're going to give you less for at every single level.
Fair play.
Yeah.
True statement. Yeah, I mean, for me, that was the most damning part of the article, or not of the interview, when he said that he was going to have to go into the office the next day, and Zach said, and deal with the "I told you so." And in my head, I'm thinking, wait a minute, someone warned you. Someone said, like, someone on your staff said, hey man, I think we should have more. Or maybe they just said this isn't going to be enough, or the community's not going to like this. And I don't know if he ignored it, but he certainly didn't take immediate action, right? And because of that, he has to deal with the "I told you so," not just from his own staff, but from most of the community who's kind of looking at the price support, going, "What happened? Like, who dropped the ball here?" They have these in-house capabilities, but they shouldn't have to rely on those. Like, you should know that you pull out the stops for Gen Con. Like, there should be a lot of stuff.
I do want to address a couple things you said there, Lucas. First of all, it was not his whole staff. As Death Jester 26 in the chat pointed out, it was one person, and they were talking about one specific component of the prize support. They weren't saying all of this is terrible. The players will revolt over this if they get any of it. They were talking specifically about one element, whether that was
The first
the
player. It was the first player token. It had to be the first player token.
See, it's funny that you say that because I'm not convinced that's true. I think that the coins were far worse than the first player token.
I see. This is
Those
where I
things are
disagree.
absolute garbage.
Like, at least the
I agree.
tokens, like when you clink them together, they make like this satisfying like noise that
They
feels
They're so
like
much
tokens to
lighter
me.
than they're so much lighter than the acrylic
Wait.
tokens.
You know what's
But
extra
regardless
stupid
of
about
what
the tokens?
It was
Wait.
one person complaining about one specific element, and it was right before they went into production. And
So one person, but how big is this team? Is it like one of three? Like, how big is the OPT?
Probably about, according to him, it's probably about half a dozen people, and that's
There's
not including
6
the actual
OP people
production
now?
people. And additionally, even if they said right before Origins or right after Origins, hey, this didn't live up to the stuff that we want to provide, they don't have time to get something better put out by Gen Con. That's not realistic.
Wait, of course they do. They have
No,
all
they
these
certainly don't.
they have all these in-house capabilities. They own all
They
this
also
art.
have to go through licensing on every one of those products.
They have to go through what?
Send them to Martin and get them back approved.
No, they don't. Not for their final promo shit. Not for their like just prize support shit. Like and like just like literally, like print some fucking extra playmats with like just shit you own, shit that you use for everything, like the Stark House logo. Like give out a couple of extras of those for top houses. Something.
Make
Something.
a melee trophy, right?
Make them like there's things they can do that don't cost them almost any extra money. Like, you know, the money they robbed from us from melee tickets that people didn't use because they pulled support could have been used to give us real prize support. Those tokens and that first player token were bullshit. Especially, God, those tokens. They give you 10 tokens and they're like, these are for gold. And it's like, hey, you know you have a plot alone that gives you 10 gold, right? This isn't enough. Like, what? It's the prize support was a fucking horrible joke. Like,
yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I wasn't happy with the prize support. I sold those coins almost immediately. I like the first player token more than most, but I understand why people don't. But I think it's a little unfair to expect them to have come up with significantly improve pricing between Origins and Gen Con based on Origins feedback.
Well, my more surprise is the fact that the prize kit was largely identical between the two.
Sure, and
which,
that I agree. There's no excuse for the
Like,
duplication. If I had gone to both,
Right.
I would have been upset.
Yeah, I mean the Midwesterners were all quite annoyed. I mean, like, I don't understand why the Forgotten Plans was reused for that. Like, I mean, it seems to me that, I guess, since they have I think of all of the prize support that's easiest for them to produce, it's the print on demand cards. Because they have the facilities right there in the FFG sort of thing, and I'm just really surprised that they did Forgotten Plans twice, which seems new, right? I mean, I guess.
Well, to say they did it twice, they probably printed it out for both. Let's be real.
Right, they printed it up, but right, it's clear if you ever go, like, it's never that they print it up. But if you, like, at Worlds and Gen Con, whenever I look, I see they're like, they have so many extra copies of these cards, that it always undervalues it to my brain. It's like, you could just give, like, everybody like 50 of these, and you would still have
Giant
what
stacks.
what happens to these, like, leftover ones? I don't. The environmental implications, but anyway, like,
Hey, what are you doing with your leftover first edition Gillies?
Hey, I'm
I
sure
use
all
them
that
as-
stuff's
I use them as
recyclable.
bookmarks.
I bet they can melt that down.
Yeah. But my point is just, like, that I think was the fact that the Gen Con kit, and I guess the kits that went to British Nationals or going to the Nordic Championships, are exactly the same as what you'll be getting as the official prize support for Stalik. Obviously Stalik prints its own mats and does all that other stuff.
Oh, you mean the stuff that FFG itself can't be bothered to do?
Right. Is really that's, I think, the biggest the most upsetting thing. Hopefully next year there will be a clearer demarcation between the prize support for nationals and the prize support for.
As a collector, I hope there's not, because that's expensive to try and get all of it. But realistically, yeah, it has to be different. I totally agree. It was absurd.
Buzz, you have a point?
One
I saw you
second.
raising your finger.
No, keep going. Bear deck.
Oh, he's taking a break.
Want me to go to the next point?
Yeah, fourth point.
All right, the fourth point, and then I'm reading the final two paragraphs. But Matt's situation is horrible. Matt Gemmon, who was misscored, and then was basically told it was his own fault. They've asked him to, what's his name? Zach asked him to email in. Matt has emailed in. We'll see what the reply to that is. But they just ignore. Like, they're like, we posted between 5 and 6. Why couldn't he have looked up there? A, no one heard the announcement. Like, almost no one I know, and I talked to everyone I could think of, heard that announcement. And B, like, the other claim is that your strength of schedule, or not your strength of schedule, your standings were posted on your matchup slips. If they thought we knew that, then there was no reason to ever post the standings. Right? Like, why do you have to post standings if you're giving them to everyone every round? They knew no one was looking.
Well, because you can get them after the round starts, though. Like, so if you want to know what your standing is, go into that round before you sit down.
So that 5-minute
They
wait,
would have to print it.
or they could have had us sit down and drop it
based
off.
on.
So
it would have been, yeah.
Or they knew we didn't know it was there. One of the two.
Well, they knew we didn't know it was there because they didn't announce when they did our, like, everyone sits down like in kindergarten style and announced, here is your kindergarten model, monitor number 1. Here's your kindergarten modeler number, moderator number 2. All these kind of things. They didn't announce that. I've also talked to a lot of people, and the people who were sitting closest to the FFG sort of Uber booth did hear an announcement about the 5th round thing. And this was also a problem in Star Wars, which I also played in, where only the people close enough could hear the, hey, make sure you double check your standings at the end of this round announcement, which I think is a Gen Con problem, but one that they could have.
It's one that they could answer just by doing it at the start.
Right. Well, thank you for finishing my point, Aaron. Like, they could have also sent, they had enough individual, like, second-tier judges that could have gone and, like, announced to the tables, hey, before you start your game, please check your strength of schedule, which is on your slip. Like, they could have done that. They had enough, judges that were capable of. There's at least one per table that could have announced this, because they had a lot of guys in the blue vests, the Walmart vests around, that they could have done and announced that. Which, some of that might just be this is the first year they've done it like this, and I understand there's a learning process, but it seems self-evident to me once these problems came up that they could have done a much better job than they did.
So even with these problems, last year, Lauren Fitch at Worlds was misscored. She told them she caught it immediately because she's Lauren Fitch, and God forbid
She's a
nothing will ever sneak by her. So, with the exception of one sperm, um,
Oh, I'm
so-
really glad Lauren and Britt don't listen to anything.
so
Brit would be proud. That was a Brit prop.
it was a Brit prop. So, in the meantime, she did tell them. She caught it immediately. She told them she was pared down round after round. She ended up finishing 5-2, at which point they finally fixed her schedule. But because she's pared down the whole day, despite finishing 5-2, despite warning them numerous times, after traveling to Minnesota in the middle of November, she missed the cut on strength of schedule. After warning them. So this isn't the first, and they know this happened. It's not like this is a secret. She told them. So like this isn't the first time this happened. There's all these huge tournaments all over the world. This doesn't happen at these tournaments. People move hell and high water to fix these things.
And
FFG couldn't.
I have an idea to that. Like places like Stolic, even big community-run tournaments in North America, they're run by really experienced community members who've been doing it forever. Like FFG run before this year, they run 2 tournaments a year. Like it's not something that they do year in, year out, like 3, 4, 5 times a year for the last 10, 15 years. Like these guys kind of scramble, they throw it all together and they run a tournament, but they're not as experienced. Like you can't argue that the people who run Stolic are as experienced as the actual FFG employees running Worlds, because the employees at FFG are so hands-off in OP until Worlds and Gen Con. And it's I don't know, we talked about this before, and I don't want to put too much on the players, but FFG OP has never showed us that they are capable of running a flawless large-scale tournament. It's not their MO. So until it is, like until they get that professional, it's hard for me to put it to not put some of the onus on the player base, which I know we should expect it to be good, expect it to be well run, but it's difficult to expect that when we've never been shown it, right? There's always been kind of hiccups in their large-scale tournaments. I think just because they don't have the experience, they don't have the expertise doing it, and hopefully that'll change. But
and I think that's the area I'm most hopeful for going forward, based on Zach's description of his experience and why he got the job. To my eye, of the last, well, I think since I started playing, the organized play position has been open 3 times, I believe. Maybe only twice, but I think 3 times since I started playing. And of the people who got that job, to me, it sounds like he is the most experienced.
I mean, based on his self-description, he helped run Magic Grand Prix and big events like this. So I mean, he should have at least some experience. I think the biggest problem is a structural one, and it's something I think it's a theme that Zach keeps coming back to, which we haven't discussed yet, which is the fact that they run OP for 8 games, or 7 games now, and each half of them are miniatures games, half of them are card games, and then but also none of them are except for Throne. I mean, there's 2 asymmetrical games, right, that are competitive Star Wars and Netrunner, which requires different scoring and different ways of looking about the way it should be run. And then Conquest and Thrones are more traditional card games. All of this requires a lot of thinking to run tournaments. Clear that the staff is just not there. I mean, look at the fact of when they published the tournament rules that we talked about in previous episodes, the fact that there were straight up errors where like Thrones terminology was in the Star Wars one and Netrunner terminology was in the Thrones one. And like, it's clear that that FFG, while hiring someone like Zach, who has experience running like Magic events and big things like that, it shows that they want to take it a bit more seriously. That at the same time, they're not investing the permanent personnel resources. Like why there is not an employee that we can point to and say, this is the X-Wing OP guy. His or her job is entirely to run OP for X-Wing, or X-Wing and Armada, if you want to say that, hey, they're close enough, right? Or a person here whose job it is to run Star Wars and Netrunner, or Netrunner might be so big that Netrunner gets his own one, or like where there are specialists within that field. But it seems that that's not the case based on the way in which both my experience with going to these big events, having gone to Gen Con now 2 years in a row, last year Worlds, and sort of their online presence and Zach's own interview, that there aren't specialists within their own company, is super frustrating. And I think makes this structural problem infinitely worse, and why we get this, where and you saw this, right? X-Wing players were complaining about some of the judging and OP stuff that was going on with them, and that's like their marquee game at this point, right? Mm-hmm. Alongside ourselves and Netrunner, right? Those are sort of the three big games for them, and it was just like a bit of like people being frustrated in general that these OP guys were, they were masters, experienced at everything but masters of none, created a lot of, I think, strain at Gen Con, and it showed strain at Worlds last year. And I think that might be the origin of a lot of the problems that what we're talking about.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
I killed the conversation. Awesome.
No, I
No,
think
you
you're spot on.
crushed it. Yeah, you killed it in a positive way, right? You demoralized it.
Well, I think Worlds will probably be better run in 2017. Worlds for us.
We hope.
Primary card game.
We hope,
I don't
right?
have any reason to believe that. So the next day they lost the strength of schedule, and while this was annoying in and of itself, Zach came on the White Book and said that it didn't matter, that they found it at the end of the day, and that since they added it in at the end of the day, everyone got exactly where they were supposed to be. But that's obviously not true. People were repaired. The graduated cut's supposed to be an extension of Swiss. People aren't supposed to be playing the same matches again.
Right.
And numerous people did. The entire sanctity of the tournament is in question at that point, right? Like, you don't have any straight
I'm really glad we
guideline
have the
for it.
national champion on when you're saying that too.
Sorry, Chris. It's not your
Yeah.
fault. It's not.
I
an
don't.
insult
I
to
don't
you,
like
but,
to apply words like sanctity
Sanctity.
in your tournaments.
To me, the only
Let
thing that
us
is
say.
sanctified are churches and marriages. I mean, come on.
I mean, and
But-
Roy's ass. But
I think
Well,
it's
yes,
an
but that's not here
unfortunate
nor
thing.
there.
Like it's.
but
I don't,
it's
I
not
don't
an
think it
unfortunate
takes
thing.
anything away
Look.
from the culture.
No, it doesn't take anything away from the winner.
One at a time.
It does. It does take away from that they're claiming that this is this valid, legit thing, and like they're specifically claiming that it's a no big deal, that it didn't affect anything, but it did. It very clearly and obviously affected things, and they're in the process of pretending it didn't. And to just come on the air and be like, "Oh no, it didn't affect anything. It didn't matter at all. We fixed it," is a lie. Like it's not a mistake. That's a lie. Because it's not hard when you're told like, "Hey, this is changing things, and here's how," and then you go, "No, it didn't change anything." Even when you know how it changed things, you're lying to the community.
Well, I think it also shows again this kind of lack of major tournament preparation, in that they had this plan to have the 2 days of Swiss, but I guess no one handling the software or the tournament structure really thought to think, well, how is that going to work with our current software build? Right? Are there any challenges to just having the second tournament? And they didn't figure it out till the tournament was almost over. So they're like troubleshooting how to run the tournament the way they'd planned to run it at the end of the tournament, right? And it's just like, man, didn't anybody think? Did anybody stop and go, hey, let's run a simulation, or let's see what it's like to do 2 days. Let's make sure our software can handle it. Because that was the thing, right? They started with the 48 that made it, but started it as a new tournament. And it didn't carry over the old Swiss, so they had to kind of go back and rebuild from day one. But in my mind, it's like, man, didn't you anticipate that? Like, wasn't anybody working with the software and the plan to go to 2 days and say, hey, this is a 2-day tournament now. Like, what do we do? Or was it just one person like, new tournament, boom, and it just happened?
Yep. So wait,
This
his
wasn't
argument.
the first one they did of this. They did the graduated cut at Origins. So that's what I don't understand is, did it work at Origins, or was Origins messed up and nobody noticed?
No, Origins was messed up. People were paired again the second day in the graduated.
problem.
No one
Same
noticed.
thing.
I
And they
didn't know
fix
that.
it. No, people
So-
posted about it and were like, "This is
I
messed
missed
up. We
it.
had to play the same people." And then they did it
Complained about it.
at Gen Con again.
I mean, like they announced that Tome is still in beta. He announced on the podcast that Tome is still in beta. So like, why are you using it for your biggest tournaments then? It's not like there aren't all these different Magic tournament softwares that could work, right?
You're not supposed to use Magic Tournament software when for non-Magic events. It's proprietary.
Okay.
Yes,
So
but there is
don't announce that.
Oh, there's a
Please do.
Swedish software for Game of Thrones that was used at Fracas. It's amazing.
Is that
Yes, same.
Yeah, someone
The
posted one on Cartoon.
Jousting Pavilion.
Jousting Pavilion is pretty
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah,
But,
It's
that's the one.
done by a Swede.
Yeah.
Okay, it is a very solid tournament software. I agree.
If these exist, if other tournament softwares exist for other games, and I'm sure there's other tournament softwares, if these exist for
Tournament
other
Magic is
games,
still not that horrible.
there's no reason they couldn't use that instead of a beta that they know doesn't work. Especially since we now have double the proof that they know it didn't work because they fucked up at Origins too. Like, why are you using the same flawed software that's not even ready yet at your biggest tournaments? And then lying to the community about it.
Well, the reason why they're using Tome is that they officially switched over to this new scoring system, right? That Tourney Magistrate, their old system, doesn't support, and so they need a new system to do it. And then, and then they won't ever use Jousting Pavilion because it's fan made. So they're sort of in this situation where they switched over to this new system before the technology was there to support it. And so they're sort of stuck now. Okay, we've announced this new way of doing Throne scoring and all these other games scoring, but our old system can't handle it, so we need to bring in this new system that's not ready, and they're sort of in a standard FFG conundrum.
I mean, but there's ways to fix it.
Well, Tome is certainly better than when it launched. Let's be honest here.
Oh, I mean, wow. It not ready, but better.
I mean,
when
it simply failed to function during regional season and broke during Worlds.
But a professional. This doesn't happen to a remotely professional company, right? You don't release it when it's still crashing for all of regional season. You don't run it for a 2-day tournament when you know for a fact because it just happened that it didn't work for a 2-day tournament.
We have a question for Seth for Chris. Yes. So Chris, Seth wants to know how important is a card design to making you care about a tournament? How much does a design raise the profile of an event in your eyes? Are there any other prizes that have existed in the game that carry comparable weight? That's a question only for Chris because he's in the club now as a champion. He's a champion. He is a champion level player, not like a card
designer.
Yeah, he's a card designer. So
Seth gets to ask it because he's not in there, right?
Because he's been close.
What's it feel like? Yeah, I mean, Seth has been talking in chat a little bit about this, and we haven't mentioned it a lot, but about the issue of the card design and how much that affects the prestige of the tournament. And I would agree with him that having a card design attached to a tournament inherently increases the value for the entire player base. Aaron had made comments about his team planning on playing in the Melee specifically because there was a card design. And I can't disagree with any of that. It's probably the most special part of winning in my mind, and it's kind of almost. I know you said you don't sanctify anything, but it's almost a sacred responsibility in my mind to get that right whenever it is I do design a card. In terms of what was the other part of his question? Oh, are there any other prizes that have existed at very comparable weight?
Those tokens, man.
Not.
The hammer, no.
Right. And the design. That's pretty unique across gaming in general. They did it in Magic for a while, and then they stopped. Invitational cards in Magic don't exist anymore, and that was a thing. There's probably 8 to 10, I believe, Magic cards across the history of Magic that are based on players, and they're all absolutely iconic cards. Shadow Mage Infiltrator, Dark Confidant, and these cards are permanently attached to these people, and those don't even have the players' names on them. They're just the images. And so to be sitting across from someone, and then you play a card that has their name on it, that's they won the right to make this card, that's absolutely unique.
Well, I guess the other thing that most people obviously card design, it's also the strength of the field, right? That's why you see tournaments like KublaCon or Red Saturday here in New York, or the Road to Stolic tournaments where you see the best people come out to, generally whatever their extended communities are. That tends to be the other thing that drives people to want to succeed at sort of these below card level tournaments, right? There's the sort of pyramid system where you work your way up Store Championship or towards that card design, and then there's this sort of community run stuff, right, where it's all about people seem driven. If you can say, hey, the best players in your region are going to come to this tournament, so you'll be playing at a pinnacle of whatever you're like. Kubla is this, right? And Red Saturday is for us.
And it's funny that you bring up Kubla, because that's a point that that one of our SoCal brethren specifically mentioned to me that I had missed pressing Zach on in the interview, and I really regret that. I don't know if a lot of people understand the situation. KublaCon is a tournament in San Francisco Memorial Day weekend every year. Since Throne's inception, it's been one of the most historically great and respected tournaments every year. It gets huge turnout. It gets the absolute top players, and California has pretty much always, had this presence. We have 4 or 5 card designs in the state now. Like, that's not messing around. And it's had multiple world champions. Matt Lay attends every year, and so it's had a huge history. It's been a regional since regionals were a thing until 2 years ago. 2 years ago, when regional applications went in, we expected the process to be, pretty standard. We get one every year. Why wouldn't we get one this year? That year, 2014, I believe, was the first year, and we got rejected. And we said, what's the deal with this? Why are we not getting a regional at this incredibly prestigious tournament? And the response from FFG at the time was, because we no longer support conventions holding regionals. And so their contention was that since there was an additional entry fee to go to the convention itself, you had to buy the badge, that was not something they wanted to promote as a regional. But then they turn around and have their event in Seattle with Uncle's Games, where they have a convention and they have all 7 regionals for all 7 of their games there. And it's been like that for 2 years now, and it's something that we in California are not happy with at all.
Absolutely. And a little update on that, I am running KublaCon this year, and my latest communication with FFG has garnered the same response, that they will not be supporting KublaCon as a regional in its current state. So we're going to have to try to get around this policy, which doesn't make sense to us. I'm not sure why it exists. Maybe they just want to support like the brick and mortar stores more, but honestly, you end up paying less for a tournament like KublaCon, and KublaCon's amazing because you don't go there and end up paying for this game and that game and the other game. You pay $40, and for 4 days you can play in all the tournaments you want for free. Like, everything is free. Once you pay your $40,
it wasn't $50 to get in and then 30 more bucks for the regional.
Yeah, like it's cheaper than most experiences, than really any con experience I've ever been.
In Sweden, we have Lincon and Gothcon in Linköping and Gothenburg, and both of them have regionals, and it's an entry fee, by the way.
So
an entry fee for both the tournament and the con, or just an entry fee for the con?
Both.
I mean, part of that might be that the European policies are a little looser, and that's something that we can't really fix.
We answer to our distributor, Bergsala, and so.
Yeah, the same is in the case with the UK. I think at least one of their regionals and their nationals were at cons. So I think it's definitely
it's more ammo for Luke.
And I think it's just North America FFG has that stranglehold on it, and it's clear that it's just the inconsistent policies, I guess, of FFG towards a lot of things like this, right?
It's a policy that I'm sure was instituted to fit some desire or need that they had, but they didn't understand that they were basically cutting the legs out from under a tournament that had been going for 14 years and that had been supporting their game for 14 years through some pretty dark times for their game. Like, KublaCon has continued to kind of be this beacon in California. Like, there was a time when KublaCon was the only real big tournament you could count on in California. We have 5 community-run tournaments in California this year. In a couple weeks, we'll be like number 5, and I have no idea why they've just decided to say, you know what, all you guys like working really hard to maintain this game and keep this game going, we don't care. We're just going to give regionals to like stores that don't really support the game and don't have a meta and don't have any history with keeping us going. And
Hey.
yeah, I mean, we're frustrated out here because of those policies that come from OP.
They did honor your history in one way.
How's that?
They actually replied to your fucking email.
They did. It was
Because-
well.
Wait, time out. My email was ignored, which is fine. I'm an asshole. But Roy, did they ever reply to you?
No, FFG Sales has still not replied to me about draft packs.
So, yeah, they're just not. They say they want to get better at communicating. Like replying to your fucking emails seems an awfully simple way to communicate, right?
It does seem like a very basic thing. And I will say for them, for the most part, I have gotten responses to emails to organize play. I mean, maybe mine have been a little more minor and easier to answer because they've been about specific issues, whether it's with a store or whatever. But I have gotten a response to all the emails I've sent them to this point.
I mean, we tried emailing about the Melee card design and were ignored as well, I believe. And eventually we had to. That's when Dan started calling, and eventually we were directed to Twitter. Because, emails and calling are definitely not the way you want to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, I've known people who've gotten very clear answers to things through back channels with FFG pretty regularly, I guess would be the way to say. But is that all your points then with this?
I mean, that's my
Aaron?
final point. But going forward, I'm not participating in any FFG run tournaments. Maybe Gen Con if I'm there, maybe. But, I'm not participating in any FFG run tournaments. Roy, Dan, and if Dave ever finishes loitering and daddying, run plenty of good enough New York tournaments. I'm not buying any more new cards until they get their shit together. I'll borrow what I need. I'll play on Octagon if I have the itch, which I sure don't. And I'm just not supporting them until they get their shit together. I'm voting with my wallet. That's in the email. They know I'm done. I'm sick of giving my money to them for them to either lie or miscommunicate or be inconsistent or pull things away from us. And I was told I was going to be disagreed with. But a lot of what I heard was, yeah, you're almost entirely right. Here's a minor point that I disagree on, but you're almost entirely right. That, yeah, they fucked this up too.
Yeah, I mean, so my disagreement was in what you just said. My main disagreement, if you'll remember, when you sent me the email in the first place to read, was saying, couching it as a manifesto and expecting a reply. When you say at the end of the email, I'm no longer buying your product, I'm no longer supporting you as a company, you don't give them any room to reply to you. What reply do they have to somebody who's burning the fields like that? There's no reason for them to come back to you with, are they going to grovel for a single person's business?
The last line is, I hope I'll receive a more relevant reply than what was on the podcast to change this, basically. And it's that they have no interest in changing this.
But what reply did you expect to, I'm leaving forever, goodbye?
I mean, the reply I honestly expected was, hey, we'll try and do better. We messed up. Something along those lines. It doesn't have to be we're really sorry to lose your business. Because I've worked places before, believe it or not. And when someone's like, I'm never coming back here, you don't go, bye. Your reply is almost always at the local rest, at everything. Okay, whatever. But the reply is always something along the lines of, hey, we'll work on fixing this. I'm really sorry. I hope you come back and we can change your mind. Some reply that's not bullshit. Just an admission of fault would have gone a long way.
Because
But there's not-
companies
all right.
do that so often. Come on.
No,
man.
but people in charge of OP, when OP has been a fucking train wreck.
Aaron, here's the problem with what your argument, and I'm going to come at you in a different way than Chris. You're never, ever, 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 ever going to get a company to admit fault. He may say they were wrong, but that's different than saying that they were at fault. Okay, that's the problem, and I generally tried to help you with this letter, or the same thing, is that they're not going to say we damn fucked up. They're just not going to, even when Zach was at his most contrite in that interview, and there were moments that he legitimately said that's on me and various things where he clearly said we made mistakes. He's still not going to say, damn boy, we fucked up, or it's they're just not going to do that, because it's just not the way in which companies work. It's also not the way Christian Peterson one of his people comes and says, hey, your OP manager did this interview, and he says that FFG was at fault for doing this, Christian Peterson's gonna, he's gonna have an email in his inbox like, why are you saying Asmodee fucked up? And then remember, all of these interviews have to be cleared by Fantasy Flight PR people, and they're not gonna let.
Got the interview as a bonus to me.
Yeah, they're not gonna sign off. Like Evan or whoever is running their PR for Thrones is not gonna sign off on the OP manager saying we fucked up, much less in an email to you, unless it is a truly private email that you're not supposed to share. But like a semi-public response to you, he's not going to say that. Like, I think I agree with most of what you said about the letter and today, but I think you're setting these terms in a way in which FFG can never fulfill.
Yes, and that was my main disagreement. Yeah.
I really think you are overestimating the extent to which they cannot, or he cannot individually admit fault, or at least that there are concrete plans to improve things.
I thought the whole interview was concrete plans.
I didn't think there was a single concrete plan, but we'll get to the direct quotes from the interview momentarily, or the direct
let's get that quotes. But I do want to make one clear thing. This is a fundamental thing about Aaron, though. He and I have talked about a variety of other topics, from politics to teaching to other things. Aaron is convinced that people in power can constantly admit that they are wrong, and
that they should try and fix when something is wrong, because that's what.
But also admit that they were wrong, which is something that you just will never see people in power generally do. So, anyway, on to your direct quotes, Aaron.
One thing, Aaron, you said that you've kind of proven us, like, we agree with you that we. The thing is, I still think that the interview was very, very good, and it was needed, and it had good direction. But I do agree with you that they fucked up a lot of things in the tournament. That doesn't make the bad. A lot of the things he said was like bad, but he said them, and that's great, right? That's.
I don't agree with that.
Okay,
like,
sure.
I'd almost rather there were no interview than his interview be like.
Okay, I could have explained it better if English was my native language, but it isn't.
No, Buzz, you did a perfectly great job.
Yeah, you did. There's nothing wrong on your end, Buzz.
All right.
All right, Glazer. What are your direct quotes?
All right, so they're not direct quotes, but all right. First, what makes OP successful at FFG was one of the first questions he would ask. So the first thing he says, they used to be successful before he came along. Fine, that's nice. I guess you have to say that, right? You can't be like, man, didn't this suck before? He cites attendance at championships as one of the major ways that OP can be successful. And if he's in charge of the LCGs, Throne's a net runner-up, but the other LCGs have nearly collapsed. Are they actually making more money based on attendance at these championships then?
Yes.
Like, are they successful?
Wait. Oh, is
Yes.
FFG OP successful?
Is FFG, they're measuring their success based on attendance at championships. So they have these two games. One game that stayed steady netrunner. One game that's up about 100 players, right? That's Thrones. And then two games that have collapsed functionally from 100 players to like 30 each. Like, are they successful by their...
Wait, Star Wars was bigger than
Yes, they are.
30.
Because they will drop the other games and stop putting money into it. Like they did with Call of Cthulhu.
It's successful as a barometer. I don't think it's successful in terms of the making.
I mean,
Not and Game of Thrones is successful. The others aren't, so they will eventually drop them.
Also, I think the problem is also, and this is something that Aaron, I'll let our listeners / viewers behind the scenes. Aaron and I talked about this before the show, and I think the problems that Star Wars and Warhammer have, or Conquest have, don't have to do with OP. Like literally, Christ could come and run the OP for those two games, and they would still have big problems. And that has to do with where the license is for FFG, where the design is for FFG, like the fact that Star Wars shot 1 foot off, like right when I started playing in 2000, the end of 2014, with a huge, massive card scam.
Games.
And then I am. And then 2015, they shot the other foot off with massive card delays. And the fact they haven't supported any of the new Star Wars content, they're just now starting to support Rebels with cards. Like there's no Force Awakens expansion for the Star Wars LCG. Like there's just so many problems with Conquest on just on a promotional side that even if the best OP like Zach put his best people for Conquest and Star Wars organized play, nothing could make those games half as big as Netrunner or Thrones or X-Wing or Armada. Just for other structural reasons have nothing to do with Zach.
So, okay. The next heuristic for success is the number of tournament kits sold, which, he brags, has tripled from the end of first edition. Again, begs the question.
That's a hilarious comparison to me.
Which many people bought that kit?
The kit from when first edition was announced to be dying, they have tripled their sales for a brand new game with a hot IP behind it. That's what he's choosing to brag about. So that's a good thing to brag about.
He should have done from what was the last big kit that people really ordered? Was it the one with the Renly mat? The one that was
first edition?
Yeah, first edition. Like the kit that when the packs were still coming out.
Whatever would have been the summer before that Gen Con, right?
I think it was maybe the prized Robert.
Yeah, it was the prized Robert. That was the last kit that the hardcore the first edition people I want that. No one cared when we got that last. I forget what the card was even in there. Was it like an alt art, the new Iron Throne? I can't remember.
So whatever. They've tripled a dying game, right? They've tripled it. They've tripled a game that they announced was closing with their new game and hot IP, extremely successful. And finally, the level of involvement and passion expressed on community forums, which is vague and seemingly disingenuous, given that he also complains that he has no way of communicating with us.
Well, if you count by number of podcasts that have began and then ended within 4 to 7 episodes, then
that's not much community involvement, right? So what makes OP successful at FFG? His answer is functionally nothing, right? Like he doesn't have a metric that he's going with. Like we went over all those answers, we're like, well, that can't really be it. Well, that can't. No. Really.
All of us agreed that the increase at Gen Con participation and the relative success of the number of people that were in nationals this year are a good sign, right? The fact that we're as big as Netrunner is a good sign.
Well, I generally tend to agree. Isn't that almost the same thought as the tournament kits? Yes, we do have a jump in attendance from what was a game that existed for 8 years with weird archaic rules, although we're quickly heading toward those again, with weird archaic rules that no one really understood, that cost almost $1,000 to buy in, versus a brand new game with this IP that everyone knows and everyone's talking about. It's one of the most talked about things in the world. Yeah, it's gonna be big. Does that really say that OP succeeded, or that sticking Game of Thrones on a game right now is probably smart?
You're at the chicken and the egg though with OP for all of these licensed products. Netrunner is a licensed product, but it's also in this weird space that the property itself is owned by FFG if the game design itself is not. So it's sort of in this weird thing. But Star Wars, Thrones is I think the problem Zach can't. To be completely honest, if I was Zach's boss, I would not measure necessarily a lot of his success by attendance. Obviously, attendance should be a big metric, but it should be how well the events are run, which I think we're in agreement that this year wasn't. But I think that's a better metric, for at least for us.
Sure, but that's not
to measure OP success. I think attendance is really important, but I actually think in many ways attendance is the metric that Zach has minimal direct control over.
So these are his
besides
metrics.
No, I agree, but we're having a discussion because we're not bound by the words that Zach says. But I'm saying when assessing how well, thinking about where OP is at the end of its first year, I'd say it did pretty well.
But I don't care where OP
on
is
the attendance front and grew.
No.
And
but why does that matter? What matters is we all just agreed that OP is kind of a flaming pile right now. 10 minutes ago, we know how we feel about OP. The idea is that he has no accurate way to measure how he's doing his job, because none of his goals for his job that affect everyone here but Buzz, none of his goals for his job are accurate measures for how he's doing.
Right. Yeah, they're not using metrics that are realistic and measurable.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
So how does that So we can't ever point at anything and say that's not working when he can just go, well, attendance is up. And you can be like, well, here's these 18 other reasons attendance are up. And he's like, but that's my measurement. And all of his measurements work the same way.
Chad does bring up a good point, though, that the metric of tracking the sales of local tournament kits, that's a good metric. His specific comparison in the interview was absurd. But saying that's a bad metric is also not correct.
I'm with Chris.
It's an incomplete metric. Fine, bad is oversimplified. It's
Sure,
an
but it's
incomplete
not going to
metric.
be complete until a full season is done, and a full season hasn't completed.
But see,
Everything but Worlds has.
No,
For
there's
me-
another kit to come out.
And Solak.
the like the store championship and the regional level, like FFGOP ultimately does not determine whether or not those are successful things, right? Those are still community-run events all across North America, Europe, wherever it is. So number of kits, that's like number of people who like worked with their store and like did the legwork for FFG. I mean, all they did was produce them and ship them out, right? To people who are putting in the work. The real metric for FFGOP is the tournaments that they run, that they organize, that they facilitate. And for me, that's where they
Metric
fail.
for organized play
And the prize
success,
support.
growth of the game. That is the point of organized play. It is growth of the game from a marketing standpoint. That's what Zach said, and that's what OP always is and should be. And that basing it on tournament kits is completely reasonable.
So-
Whether it means that the game is growing and it's not acknowledging, they're not saying we're doing amazing because we're selling tournament kits.
Well, he
He's
specifically
saying-
did sort of say that. He heavily implied that.
Sure, Zach may have said it, but that's not my point. My point is using sales of tournament kits as a metric is saying people are interested enough in our game to buy these kits and run these events. And I think that's a fine metric. How they metric is a different matter. How they present that metric is a different matter. But as a metric, I think it's totally fine.
But I go into stores and I see stacks and stacks of OP kits that are never going to get used, right? They're piled up at
That
stores.
store's absurd. That store's an awful example.
It's
Okay.
not one store. It's not one
Okay.
store though. It's multiple stores.
Let's be honest here, though. Okay, I want to transition us from these metric conversations, but I want to say one final thing here: is that FFG's attitude towards organized play is a come to us attitude, which is it's a bottom up attitude. Like they measure it like they say, oh, you ordered X number of kits. That means the community is excited in Y amount, right? Instead of, oh, we pushed X number of kits, so we saw this amount of growth.
Right, it's not like they're being paid on commission for each kit they sell.
Right. They expect it, like they expect the community to do the legwork. Like that's the key thing, which is different than other gaming companies and may not be the right attitude, but that's FFG's attitude, and it's just what we have to get used to. But let's
And
stop
part of
talking
that
about
comes from
metrics.
Being a board game company and
Yeah.
being more of a board game company with Asmodee on board.
So next one, Aaron. What's next point?
So part of the reason that Melee Prize support was pulled, specifically the card design, they looked at Worlds last year and they had 8 games and 12 card designs, 12 championship events, and all those extra events were thrones. So they didn't have enough resources to manage all of that, which sounds good, except then you realize that those extra thrones events were because they killed the game and relaunched it, and they had to support 2 different games, so as to
Only one
please
of
the
those
fan
events
base.
is that true of though. Only one of those events was because they killed the game.
Oh, 2. They didn't have to do the draft either, right? Like if they just did
No, they could.
joust, so it would be 8 games, 9 events this year, right?
They could do a draft Worlds again. I hope they do.
They could, but
They're not though.
they're not.
I don't think. Yeah, but I don't think they
But
did a
wait,
draft
wait.
Worlds because the game was dying.
No, fine. But they.
I
they
actually
said-
would disagree with Chris.
Yeah, I think so too. But that's fine. I think it was sort of like a make good to the community because, like, hey, we really like you to keep playing this new game. We want you to be here and we want you to feel valued.
Yeah,
Either way, like, if this coming year, if they did 8 championship level events at Worlds and 9 events for 8 games, and one of those was Melee, like, you no longer have that extra huge resource dispersal into thrones. And then he also further argues that all the other events are joust, so why ever support Melee at these levels, since regionals on down are all joust? Why are the World Championships Melee? He further then goes on to suggest that he's offering, going forward, Melee on Sundays to the bigger regionals. So if you're adding the support, then where does pulling the support and making the game smaller come from? How do these two goals work together?
Because we don't know what that Melee support is going to look like. It's not going to be
Yeah.
a Melee regional. It's going to be a different tournament series with different prizes, which is cool. It's going to be annoying to collect, but I don't think I think he's saying Melee, and pardon me for borrowing a hackneyed sort of racist expression, but Melee is separate but equal for them. They're trying to make Melee into its own separate thing that still has
Yeah.
support but is not supported as the main track of the main game.
I think Chris is right there. I also think it's super weird that they're opposed to hosting regionals at conventions and then asking people to show up for a second day of events.
I put that
yeah.
in my email to FFG. I was like, KublaCon is uniquely set up to absolutely incorporate this second day of Melee.
Because I'll
And
be
they were
completely
like,
honest.
no.
I'm just going to use a personal New York example. There's like fucking no way you're going to make me go out to Boonton, New Jersey on Saturday morning and then Sunday morning. Like
He'll be so hungover.
Yeah, I'll be too hungover. Or like the same thing is true as if you have it in New York City. Like me asking the guys from South Jersey to come Saturday for the be there for the 10:30 a.m. beginning of play, 11 a.m. beginning of play, and then play all day, and then maybe go out to dinner or more likely go out to karaoke and drinks afterwards and party really hard, and then go home and then show up and then again Sunday morning. It's just like it's too ridiculous. Like that. Of course, that's just like that is a very like American way in which American regionals work, which people tend to do one day commute to these kind of things. But I still think like the idea of this separate Melee series that isn't its own regional, like if you did each region gets 3 Joust regionals and 1 Melee regional, I think would be a great way to go about it. But like turning Melee into a side event for regionals, I think is a gigantic mistake.
Well, there's a big problem.
Sure, but
they
it
don't know
shows
how to
that
communicate.
It shows
with
that
the
they're
community.
trying, and that's
Yeah,
so they're gonna make some fuck ups along the way, but they're doing something, and that's saying more than we've said for previous OP.
Well, they said they're going to do something. They haven't done anything. They've said they're going to do a lot of things in OP. It's until we see Melee tournament rules and
Completely fair.
well-supported Melee tournaments, I don't think they've done anything. They've just said, like they've said a dozen times.
Well, but like even so, like let's say they do want these things to succeed. They're running them on Sundays. They really have this hope they succeed. You know how you get people to show up those Sunday mornings? You have a Melee World Championship, so that like they're building towards something, so that you can get a buy-in to something that actually matters. You have a card design at the end of Melee, even if it's not called a World Championship, so that staying those Sunday mornings gives you a chance to test things and play that extra game and get those extra reps in.
Now we're picking nits. We're saying you not only are you
not a
trying to
nit.
dictate what support you're doing, but how you're doing it. Like the fact
No.
that they just let them start and then go from there. Like don't.
But they had already started. They removed something. They had already started. Like they already had the ultimate goal of Melee, like the ultimate way to support Melee.
Let Zach specifically start.
If he ever does, we'll see. However, saying Melee doesn't matter and then saying I'm going to support it is a particularly, at the very least, silly idea. Melee doesn't matter.
Sure.
It's a side event. It's only a side event ever. But here, by the way, want to buy this extra kits for him?
You know what is one of the most impressive things and why Aaron Glazer is an excellent politician is that he is one of the biggest LOL Melee people in the entire world. But the fact that he can use Melee as a stick to beat upon FFG with is, and you're definitely marshaling your arguments in a very powerful manner, Aaron. But it's also super impressive because you don't give a shit about the future of Melee.
You know what? I would
as an
have
actual
totally
experience.
You know, I would have played Melee at Gen Con for that card design.
I know you would have.
I would have thrown.
I had your
some
ticket
for you guys. Yeah.
My $15 was wasted. So
Yeah. FFG said, "Fuck your $15. Light that shit on fire." All right.
you took my draft ticket.
I did, which was the only thing worth it. All right. And then there's each game gets one card design at the World Championship event, which is fine, but that doesn't mean we can't have support. And there's no reason to pull what you've already advertised for the 50th time. Like if they didn't advertise a card design, if they didn't advertise a World Championship, a North American Championship for Melee, no one ever has a complaint, right? Like there's a minor grumble that immediately goes away. It's that they advertised it, then pulled it.
Yeah, and on that point, we have no disagreement. I'm completely with you on that.
All right. So can I take a question from Card Game DB here?
Oh.
Is this from Yeezus?
It is
Card
from
game
Yeezus.
DB
All right,
being
let's get a
used.
Yeezus question.
Yes. So his question is, should we get rid of the graduated cut? Like,
Absolutely not. The graduated cut was
No, it's great. It's a can if FFG can't learn to run them, yes.
Yeah, run it correctly, but I like graduated cut. Just make it a true continuation of the Swiss, right? I don't think they'll screw that up again, though they did do it at Nationals and Gen Con. Hopefully there's enough like vocalization of that screw up that we don't see that at Worlds. If we see it at Worlds, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll lose my mind. I'll lose.
Well,
my
that's
mind.
what the show will be for. Like we'll have you on and whoever the world champ is that year, and
It won't be me, but I'll be there. I'll be there to witness it.
I'm sad I won't be there this year, but
Boo.
Said you won't be there too.
Next section?
Next section. How many more sections do you have, Aaron? By the way,
I don't know, 15.
Jesus.
can we wrap it up in like the next 15-ish minutes?
Yeah, let's do it fast. Go. Community help and communication. They're considering a playtest group for OP and trying
That
to
sounds-
figure out how they can do it.
Skip this. No one cares. Think about this playtest.
No, I
group.
care. I want that to happen so much. Are you kidding me?
Why do they need it? They have playtesters. Like, is there a reason they can't
Right,
email
but
these
I mean,
questions to playtesters?
There's playtesters who are complete randoms though. Like that's not. They can
What we-
talk to playtesters, but they're not. That's not the same. Like there needs to be a focus group for that. I'm totally on board.
Right.
With this.
It's not like I'm also on board with it, but at like the same time, it's like if this is literally of all the things we've done, either FFG does it or doesn't do it. Like,
But they could approach competitive metas and see if they could create 3 or 4.
Isn't that
OP
what we wish
groups.
playtesting were to begin with?
Oh,
Well, let's just have,
No,
let's just
a
have
mix.
some
I think-
randos do it.
I think playtesting should be a mix. I think it should be a mix. There are.
yeah, I
competitive
agree. I agree with Sid.
Oh yeah, and there's absolutely
mixed.
something to be said for even within a OP playtest group. There's absolutely something to be said for having people included in that who don't go to anything more than a local tournament kit tournament.
Sure. But wouldn't that just be your randos and the larger playtest group? I'm not seeing what the difference is between these groups.
Again, this is why I'm saying this is like
It's all about focus. It's all about interest.
Okay. I feel like it's just easy to, like, if someone sent an email,
I mean, so don't get me wrong.
would assume it would
Polling
happen.
the current playtesters is better than nothing. If they were to do that, sure, fine.
well, since they say they have no resources and way to do it, like, and they already have this group made. Okay. Next thing
one.
is, again, that they can't figure out how to get us information, which still boggles my mind, but let's move on from that. Okay. They want a better experience at big tournaments because Gen Con is a big tournament. But improvement is giving prize support so that when people drop, they can do other stuff, right? Like, that's their big improvement for Gen Con this year.
no, that's the opposite of what he said.
No,
Was that the improvements that they made was that when people drop,
yeah, they
it's a
still
less
get their prize support.
disruptive no. There's a less disruptive experience, and by including a prize at the end of by complete, his
Right,
argument
it
was that you get a prize.
Disincentivizes random dropping and people walking away as opposed to checking the drop box and doing it properly.
Right, and so he said overall, and I actually think this is pretty much true, is very few people, unlike my first Gen Con experience, complained about randos just not showing up for their rounds. It was very limited, like people dropped properly, like that aspect of the tournament was very well run, I would say. Like I think that of all the things that Zach did for Gen Con, he deserves sort of a pat on the back for that. Like I think that was a successful reform that they should carry on into, well, Worlds is less like,
Yeah,
World,
I guess
it won't matter at Worlds.
Drop. Like really?
It's an
people,
it's an
and they
improvement.
drop and then go to the bar, right? Like, and they just start. Or
It's
they
an
go, or they
improvement
go to
for
the
one
food
tournament in the world, right?
and Origins, right? So two
Yeah, there's nothing else to do at Origins. Don't lie to yourself.
because there's so many. Yeah. Anyway, next point.
He's not wrong.
We covered the rest of this. Prize support going forward. So he says that the mats and boxes are gone from kits, specifically because people were fighting hard for the best of these, right? So that they save these for the events with most prestige, i.e., I would assume Origins, Gen Con, and Worlds.
Well, you
And
get mats at
regionals.
regionals too, and regions.
Sure, okay, regionals. So what they're basically saying is that people wanted to compete for these things, and because demand was so high, they took them away.
I don't think that was all he said, though. It also really reduced the footprint of the kits. I don't know if you've seen the kits, Aaron, but they moved from boxes, like heavy shipping boxes
He might have said that was
were
lost in the actual cast.
rectangular to manila envelopes.
I think
mean-
that, let's be completely
So,
honest, I think that's the
regardless of
real
what he
reason why
said,
they get.
he may have paid that some lip service, but really, I think the shipping cost was real.
It was the
I
same
would say
thing
that
when
not
we had
everything.
Michael Hurley on and we asked him like why they got rid of the cardboard boxes, and his basic point was like it reduced shipping costs, and
Right.
and to be fair, let them keep the chapter packs, at least by his logic, the same price
Yeah.
that they've always been, by making
That-
the practice shitty.
That metric of sending so many kits actually was costing them money. So they're like, we're too
Like,
successful.
Shouldn't
Let's
they
make
be?
it cheaper.
Shouldn't they?
I mean,
be,
the tokens
They
are nice.
also made the kits cheaper as well.
did.
So that's something for the stores who
I mean,
are
I meant-
buying that they probably appreciate.
I mean,
I definitely miss the mats, but I think that the tokens have been really good. So
so
Yeah.
stores would appreciate
So,
that.
But
How
the
long
tokens
until-
are really good, but let's see where they go once they run out of houses to token.
Yeah,
That's my
Well,
yeah.
it's like,
Not even that.
gonna
Let's
start
see if they
getting
can do a set for
patches
all
again.
8.
we've had
So true.
Targ and Lannister for so far, right?
Sure, I mean it's gonna take a while. Don't get me wrong.
And Stark, right?
Well, Stark
Yeah,
was at
Stark-
the regional, right?
Stark was
Yeah.
regional, but they're not
Right.
gonna re-give those.
Oh
No, but I
oh,
mean,
like, I wouldn't. This is where I disagree with Chris. I imagine there'll be like 2 seasons from now, those Stark tokens will be in a kit.
But here, since the
I hope you're
CCG,
wrong, but I mean I have no reason to believe you are. So
we've never had a full run of every house getting their own consistent, like matching set of tokens since the CCG. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
true.
I like that we have these like 3.
Do you remember those
Are we
weird
gonna get 5 more?
transparent Targ tokens we had in first edition?
Oh yeah, random. So I'd like to see them get all the complete set, because then you can collect something. Then you're like, look, I have all 8 sets of these tokens, and that'll feel good. But if they're just dropped away, like everything else just gets dropped away,
People will.
I'll
flip
feel less
for
excited
Tyrell
for it.
The
tokens.
ones I want are the net run, not the net runner, the Night's Watch from the Kingslayer tournament. Those things are tough to find.
Oh, I had those. I wonder what I did with them.
I don't know. You should probably send them to me though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Want them?
No, anyway.
Are- I'll trade
have
them.
them.
No, shut up. I'm trading them for a
I'm
card.
listening, Andreas.
Ooh.
I get to design that card. You get some nice watch tokens.
Wow,
Fair
they're
trade.
not worth that much to me. But
Oh, okay. Oh,
Okay.
So
Next
no,
point.
the point there that I was trying to make was, at what point does the quality of prize support drop to where that it's not worth traveling to these kids?
you
It's
have
not
to
worth
travel
going.
to them.
You know,
Mine's at a
lot-
local game store.
Yeah, everyone doesn't have one. Like when I go to a kit, and I've gone to a couple kits, it's a good like $40 investment and hour travel each way.
Interesting. I think that says something more about your local area than it does about FFG's price support.
I mean, it's New York.
You don't have to play the kits at the store. The stores are more than happy to sell you the kit. You can play
Yeah,
at home.
FFG doesn't want you to do that.
Oh, fuck him. We buy them from the store. We do that all the time.
It
It's fine.
happens. It
All
happens
the
like
time.
crazy here, and that was my point about inflating these kits, because stores will just buy them for people to buy them outright. It happens.
Yeah,
all the time.
which I think in many ways, like, how else to, like, say I want to run a tournament, like, that might not necessarily fit at a store, right? Like, say you want to run a tournament, I don't know, for your fucking birthday. Like, you really
Thrones
love
War?
Thrones. Yeah, or Thrones War, right? Like, you want to run a tournament. Like, how are you supposed to do that? Like, being able to go to a store and say, hey, I would like to buy a tournament kit from you to run a tournament for this game seems like a perfectly reasonable thing for FFG to want to support. But the fact that you have to sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like, oh yeah, here, run this in the store as you walk out the door with this tournament kit to go do whatever you're going to do is I think one of the problems. The fact you can't just go to the FFG website and order a tournament kit for that season for yourself, which is something I think would be great. But I mean, I know they want to support, stores, and that there's a philosophy behind it. But I think it's kind of foolish at this point. But anyway,
So,
other points.
On the other side of the coin, chat brings up: at what point do we play this game for fun and not crappy prizes?
Ever?
Is it the tournament kit that brings you a $40 investment? Are you saying you wouldn't go if there were different prizes? If it was only store credit?
If
Oh, whoa.
That was
Store
specifically
credit doesn't
I'd
make you
rather
claim for
have
cash.
store
Fair.
credit, but no. Look, there's definitely a balancing point, right? Like, there's a point where I'm deciding whether to go or not, and where the prize support can be what drives me to go when I otherwise wouldn't.
Okay.
Like, especially for New York tournaments, which always have amazing prize support. Like, even if I didn't want to support people, like the surprises are so good that even if I'm like, I'd rather skip that, I'd be willing to travel. I'd be willing to make that effort. And like having shitty prize support, I mean, I got Octagon right here, man.
For me,
Basically,
I'm
Aaron only
very,
shows up for things when I guilt him.
I'm very competitive. So I want to compete at the highest level. I want to challenge myself, and in order to do that, I need to play good players. In order for there to be good players, there needs to be many people playing in a tournament. In order for there to be many people playing in a tournament, need people to travel to it and have prizes. I only want enough prizes so that people show up, so that people get good, so I can challenge them and beat them. That's fun. That's why I play.
Yeah, Seth says,
You're the greatest.
call it commitment. Prizes or whatever are what make people care and raise collective commitment that make tournaments more fun.
That's right.
That's accurate. So without good prizes, like I'm more likely to take my Night's Watch Kings of Winter deck and just, screw around if I go at all. And if I decide not to go because I could do that at home, then the store loses money.
Night's Watch is great. Why would you like? Oh, I'm screwing around. I'm playing Night's Watch.
I don't
You're
like
gonna
it.
win with
I don't
it.
like Kings of Winter. The
Okay.
Lion deck is great. I don't like the Kings of Winter.
I agree, it's garbage.
All right.
Awesome.
Last
Wow, meta
point.
discussion.
Very last point.
You would think we're a Game of Thrones podcast. What?
I mean, we're an organized play podcast. All right. Very last point. So FFG or Zach or whoever want all these comments. They want to make all these promises going forward, like things will get better. But he also announces that feedback prizes are already being planned through next year's regionals. So
Star Wars announcement was
nothing
made.
we're saying is going to have an effect for at least the next year. And
No,
further,
it can have an effect on next Gen Con and next Origins.
that's next year, sir.
Okay, I didn't know you meant next calendar year, not next tournament year. Sorry.
Well, the end of next tournament year, if we're going from Gen Con to Gen Con, would be Gen Con, right?
Well,
Like we could affect
But,
nationals.
but here's the thing, though. They didn't
Wait,
really
further-
screw up the Star Championship or the regional prize kits were perfectly fine this year. Like,
agree.
So that was
I
before
don't
they pulled
disagree.
everything. Yeah.
The plaques at the store championship kits were pretty garbage, to be
A
honest.
little
yeah,
cheap.
well,
Oh,
yeah,
like,
they were a little cheap.
They didn't
Okay.
win a store championship, and I'm kind of glad because I wouldn't want to put one of those things up.
But we'll definitely give them at least more than a passing grade.
Oh yeah,
for Star
yeah,
Championship.
definitely like C+ to B-, definitely.
But so what can we do? I mean, there is
Wait.
an OP feedback form to fill out. Like if you want to change
they
it,
will ignore you if you. But then further,
maybe.
and then when they do see a good idea, when they do even announce that they're going to follow through on an idea, we get no news on the player rankings when asked. We have no announcement at this
Who
time.
cares about the players?
It's not going to happen.
So that was
Look,
actually
when they
honestly,
announce it, I know.
rankings question was actually I don't. You seem to be taking it in the opposite way as I took it. Because I took it as good news because he was being very coy about that, which means to me there's something in the works.
Yeah, there is for the judge program, which was hoped to be out in July, which was hoped to be around last July, which is now hopefully for the end of the year. The issue is like my lack of hope for improvements is that they make promise after promise and never follow through. I'd like to see some follow through at some.
And the problem is that the follow through does not come quickly or easily, and that's a combination of factors here. It's on Zach, but it's also on FFG, but it's also on Asmodee North America. It's also on the corporate structure, and there's a lot of that we can't really directly affect. And I'm not excusing them. Let's be clear on that. I think they could do better at things that they have more direct control over. I just think that some of the issues that you have brought up tonight are ones that they have less direct control over than you believe them to.
Fair.
But also, let's forget that we're dealing with a board game company that has this
A
step
board game
sibling.
company that has an organized play problem, as I've heard them described in the past.
Yeah. But they have this step sibling of these card games that these half board game, half card game hybrids, right? It seems to be completely honest. The OP that it feels like FFG is most excited to announce is the Lord of the Rings OP. Like those like the things that get the most promotion are those Lord of the Rings like adventure like things that they do all the time, which seems to fit the FFG or the Asmodee North America philosophy more than what a lot of Netrunner and Thrones, that's the podcast we're on, people want from their games. So I'll be interested to see where the new Cthulhu LCG fits into the OP scheme and other things like that. So.
isn't it interesting also that FFG is now like made a stated goal to go back into collectibles, and that itself is going to change the nature of the company, because collectibles are further from kind of the board game market than LCGs are, if LCGs kind of occupy that middle space. And for a collectible game, you absolutely expect strong OP, right? I mean, collectible games, I think, have a little bit more pressure to have a solid OP. I don't know if they're going to create more than just this first new Star Wars collectible game, but I'm assuming they will. I mean, in the interview given at Gen Con, it was Horvath was like, this is an area which we've neglected and we're looking to re-explore as a company. It sounded like this new Star Wars dice hybrid thing was not going to be their first, not going to be their only kind of dive into this new realm. So OP has to expand, I think. It can't just fall apart.
I think that's dependent. I think that's dependent on how well they do. And I think that's maybe what they don't necessarily understand as well as they could, is they go into Star Wars Destiny, and if they prize Star Wars Destiny like they prize Thrones, it's not going to survive, and it's not going to, it's not going to make them want to print more collectible card games, which is, kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's the truth.
And it will straight up, if they release product like they release product for their LCGs, it will kill the CCG or the pseudo CCG model. But I mean, if it is successful, well, number one, thank God that the Star Wars competitive games are now their own event, and we don't have to deal with the dice game like next year in November. Or this year, because it won't be out. I mean, you guys might get free copies. Who knows what they'll do at Worlds this year or whatever.
X-Wing still gets those nice days, though.
Get a starter?
They might give you a starter or something.
$10 value.
But I wouldn't be surprised if the dice game ends up being very successful, that if they have the rights, that there will be a Thrones dice game.
If there's one thing I've learned, it's that if you slap the Star Wars logo and Star Wars characters on a box, people will friggin' buy it. Like,
or hat.
Yeah. I'm part of the Star Wars collectible card game players committee, which is now producing cards for a game that's been dead since 2001, and we're still making new cards for it. And people still come to the forums every month. Like, I'm a brand new player. I just found out this game existed, and it's been dead for 15 years. And we still get these people, and people still hold value on these cards on eBay. So if it has Star Wars on the box, it will make money.
Yeah.
I mean, great.
All right.
Where does that leave us?
Well, I mean, that wasn't a point related to that.
No, but like, if the Star Wars stuff does well, where does that leave us?
Well,
I mean,
it doesn't leave us anywhere because we're separated.
More money in Asmodee North America.
And it might leave us in a place where they expand OP and hire more people. And I mean, maybe. All we can say is maybe. I mean, if they have collectible games that take off and an OP program that's successful with Star Wars, it should be good for Game of Thrones. It doesn't mean it will be, but it should be better for us.
I think
rising tide raises all boats and all that jazz.
That's true. But I mean, and the second thing is these two, Sid and Chris, will have to deal with this at Worlds this year. But starting next year, we're off the track, except for Nationals with all the Star Wars games, Nationals and Continentals. So it won't affect, we won't be having the same sort of championship seasons. We won't have the same blah, 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 blah with the Star Wars games. So it won't really necessarily affect us. What I think, my thing is, if Star Wars Destiny is successful, there could easily be a Thrones game, because one of the big open questions for a lot of Star Wars LCG players is, if Destiny is successful, what's going to happen to the LCG?
Yeah.
I think Thrones as a card game is obviously right now more successful than Star Wars LCG, so we're a little bit safer. But I do think that if FFG moves into this collectible space, and the fact that, to be completely honest, the Star Wars license is a permanent money spinner for them, but let's be honest about our Thrones property.
Let's be clear, nothing's permanent with Star Wars, though.
Right. But as long as they have the license,
get dropped by Disney at a moment's notice.
Right. But as a franchise, Star Wars will always be making the money as long as they have it. Thrones' place in popular culture is rapidly declining. Like, it's going to reach a point soon where people are going to stop giving a shit. And like once the show is over, like the drop of like randos on the internet who are interested in a card game based on a show that's been off the air is going to just drop. And that's going to be a big thing for FFG. They're going to want to exploit this license up to that point. And it'll be interesting to see now that they've gone back into collectible things, what happens in the future.
I think that's true to a point, but only if media companies actually disengaged from Game of Thrones. Like it's such a big world. I really don't see that happening. It's such a mainstay of the kind of fantasy media experience. It would be like Star Trek just dropping off the map at this point. Like I don't think it'll happen. Whether it's HBO or somebody else, it's gonna keep going.
Right. I think it may have reached critical mass. Like who knows what we see, whether we see, Martin's talked about a movie ending the series. He's talked about, they could do the Dunk and Egg novels.
Mm-hmm.
One of the funniest things that I've seen recently in regards to that is my buddy was just over here and I bought some packs of the CCG at Gen Con so we could do a CCG draft. And he picked up one of the packs and he looked at the back of it. And I don't know if this will come through. The back of the pack is an ad that says, "Read the novels by George R.R. Martin." So if you pick up a pack of the cards and you know what the cards do, but you've never heard of the books, that's where you go for that. So the fact that it's come this far and there's a TV show and there's popular knowledge of it says to me that something's got to happen.
There's Funko Pop dolls. It's not disappearing.
It's Funko Pop dolls for the Golden Girls.
And it hasn't disappeared in all this time. Still on reruns. Still good show.
There he is. That's right.
There it is.
It's my Ray, yeah. All right. So any sort of final thoughts? I had some other things that we were going to talk about, but we've been going on for a long time, and I need to get to bed, and Alan needs to get to bed, and all these kind of things. So
and it's 7 in the morning in Buzz's world.
But yeah, the sun is up, and he is party ready. He's got his 5th Red Bull of the day ready for him. So any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we say goodbye?
I'm just keeping all my fingers and toes crossed that next year is a good OP year. But I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, as John Krause has said several times, like, it's these people. It's not the little dumb tokens we get. It's not even having my picture on a card. It's like going and having an excuse to visit.
I'll trade you those Night's Watch tokens for it. I'm telling you, you don't want that picture. I got you.
So Chris, we'll have you on after Worlds then to talk about the state of OP after Worlds.
I mean, I hope to be on before then. I'm enjoying this greatly. So
you're welcome on whenever you want.
Hopefully, we'll have nothing but good things to say about the total 180 of prize support at a major.
I mean, hopefully we'll be talking about cards in our next episode, right? Hopefully the Lanny box or something will be out. Who knows?
Should be the Lanny box, yeah.
Yeah,
we've never built a deck on this podcast. We should build a deck.
Thanks Christ.
Like we've got.
This is not that
video.
podcast.
We've got video. Like it's the easiest deck building in the world.
Well, we'll see. We have a whole 2 weeks because there's a white book episode that I'm on between now and then. So, yeah, Aaron's not right. Fuck that, as Aaron just said. So, Buzz, any final thoughts?
No. Go to bed, sleep.
Right. Go to bed,
sleep. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, I really want to thank all of our live audience, all of our chatters, including Seth, for sticking around for most of this discussion, which is pretty impressive for him. And you are our loyal listeners for listening to this 12th episode of The Second Sons. So have a wonderful night, afternoon, whenever you're listening.
Happy birthday, me.
Happy birthday, Aaron Glazer. I will be
today.
birthday karaoke. So that's a good note.